Hello everyone, thanks for tuning into today's video. Going to have a look at the weather next week to 10 days in today's video. I've already done the 5-day forecast, which takes us up to Monday next week, bank holiday Monday. If you want to know more about that, check out the video which is on the homepage. Just scroll down the page a bit further, so leave a link ads. You'll be able to watch that. There's also the written version. You get to that by buttons at the top of the page. It's going to be quite a cold 5 days coming up, especially so for the south. We're starting off with frost and fog, but in the north it's milder. Over the new year, we're going to turn the winds into the north, so even Scotland and Northern Ireland will come into colder conditions. There could be snow showers in the north as well. If you want to know what's happening in the next 5 days, do check out the 5-day forecast. This is going to take us through the first week or so of January. I've got some quite big questions now as we're getting through in towards January. What's going to happen? Also, we're going to have a fairly cold week next week at times. I don't think it'll be sustained cold, but it might be cold enough at times, a little bit of wintry weather and a few surprises to crop up in terms of perhaps a little bit of snow. And we've also got a very intense cold pool heading in towards Scandinavia next week, just to our northeast. And when this happens, we do have to be on alert, really, because the models don't handle it very well. When you drop a deep cold pool into northern Europe, it's a little bit uncertain for models to deal with it. So they will tend to try and break the Atlantic through quite quickly and just blow the cold away. Very often the cold is more stubborn, and if we was to get a build of pressure over Scandinavia, turn the winds into the east, then we will pull in some really cold air from the east and the northeast. It's a very low risk at the moment, but we need to be watching out for the possibility at least. So I'm going to talk you through everything that's going on in a moment. It's a very complicated picture as we're going into January, but I'll try and explain what's happening in a second. Before I get on with that, just a quick say about the ads. There's links to articles on pages. Have a browse through widgets and click through the links if there's any articles that you're interested in. Excuse me, any articles that you're interested in, you're helping us to pay for our website. Thanks very much for doing that. So we'll start off with the Arctic Oscillation observed and forecast graph. So we can go back into September here with the black line. That's to the start of September just there. The red lines at the end are showing us where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the Arctic Oscillation to go. Remember, the Arctic Oscillation is an index that's reflecting the state of the atmosphere over North Pole. It's not driving anything, just telling you what the atmosphere is doing. So back into the autumn through September, we was very positive with the Arctic Oscillation. Then through October and November, we went negative. And then through December, most of the month has actually been positive again. And up towards Christmas, it did go very, very positive indeed with that Arctic Oscillation. Now, what this means is that when the Arctic Oscillation is positive, it's telling you've got low pressure over the North Pole, and consequently you strengthen the westerlies through the mid-latitudes, and particularly through the Atlantic and into Europe. So that very positive few days with the Arctic Oscillation was associated with the stormy weather and very mild weather that we had just before and running into the Christmas period. When the Arctic Oscillation is negative, it tells you you've got blocking up over pole, you've got high pressure, and that is normally the route to bringing very cold, even severely cold weather into the mid-latitudes. Now, it's not a guarantee that we will get cold, because exactly where the high pressure, where the blocking is sitting, is a critical factor. If it's not in a position to deliver cold to a specific area, then of course it won't deliver cold to a specific area. So it might be that, for example, you've got a very negative Arctic Oscillation, a lot of high pressure over the pole, and you're pushing cold air into America. But for us, it might not be all that cold. We might be strengthening the jet stream and actually bringing an Atlantic-driven period through. So it's not a guarantee to anything, but when we get our coldest weather, it tends to coincide with a negative Arctic Oscillation, tends to coincide with northern blocking. So the latest is that we are just here. We have got a slightly weaker positive Arctic Oscillation, you see what I mean, compared to what we had over Christmas, but we are still very positive with that AO. As we get into January, this is 1st January just here, you'll notice the red lines generally trending downwards. So it looks like they're moving into negative territory. Now, you'll notice there are some members of the GFS ensembles that are really dropping off a cliff with the Arctic oscillation. That one just there, for example, is going down towards -5, -6. That's extreme negativity of the Arctic oscillation. That particular member of the GFS ensemble, if we could look at the chart, it was actually producing to get to that very negative Arctic oscillation number. That would have really extensive northern blocking. And no doubt somewhere we'll be getting very, very cold from that. It's an outlier, and there's a few members that go with that as well. Not quite that extreme, but quite a few members, albeit in a minority, are going into very negative territory. The general trend, however, is to go down to this sort of level. I think, oh, that's a little bit wrong. So to go down to this sort of level just here, which is into negative territory, but not to drop the Arctic oscillation off a cliff. However, we've got to be watching out for what's going on there, because if we was to get a very cold spell some point through the first half of January, I'm sure it will go along with extensive northern blocking. So it'll be one to keep an eye on, see what the Arctic oscillation is doing over the next week or two. The North Atlantic oscillation is the same idea. This again, an index that's reflecting the state of the atmosphere in the North Atlantic rather than the North Pole this time. The black line again telling us where the NAO has been. The red line's at the end where the GFS ensemble's forecasting it to go. Very positive at the moment with the North Atlantic oscillation, as we have been with the Arctic oscillation, we know that, but the general trend, again, as going into the start of January, is to move the North Atlantic oscillation down into slightly negative territory. So both of these indexes seem to be lining up to produce something colder, I think, for the early part of January, but possibly not all that severe. But we do have to keep an eye on it, because if they was both indexes to go very negative, it would tell us that the atmosphere is getting itself into an extremely blocked sort of setup, and that will probably be enough with the cold pools sitting up to the northeast over Scandinavia. That will probably be enough to start to bring that our way. So the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles are reflecting all of this, really. The red line here is the 30-year temperature average in terms of the upper air temperatures. We are above average at the moment with those upper air temperatures, but we're having a classic winter high pressure, which means we're getting an inversion. So although it's mild aloft in the upper atmosphere, down on the surface, because of the time of year, because it's winter, we radiate the heat very quickly out in space. The sun hasn't got much strength to it. What strength it has got will the heat from that will be radiated out in space very quickly, and we get it colder on the surface, particularly if there's fog, and we have got fog at the moment. So fog and frost down on the surface, even though aloft it's fairly mild. Some people consider this to be sort of faux cold, fake cold, but to me cold is cold, and if it's freezing, whether that's coming from an easterly or a northerly or just an inversion, it doesn't make any difference. That's how it feels, and it is cold across England and Wales today. For the northern part of the country, though, it's milder. We are realising these above average upper air temperatures because we're bringing in a southwesterly breeze stirring up the atmosphere, and so it's milder up in the north, but down in the south it is a genuinely cold day. We'll be staying that way for the next couple of days. Now, to the new year, we obviously get a drop in temperature taking place around the 1st and the 2nd of January. That's just there. Got to watch out for that, because we're bringing a cold front down across the country, and as that cold front stalls in the south on New Year's Day, we might get a bit of an undercut from the cold air, so that could turn the snow a little bit, the rain a little bit to sleet or snow on the back edge of that rain. I don't think it'll amount to too much, but there could be a few flakes in the air on New Year's Day. Now, beyond that, you'll notice as you go through the first week of January, which is this part of the chart just here, first and second week of January, the trend is generally to keep the ensembles below average, below the red line, but not significantly so. So it looks like a fairly cold period there, below average certainly, but not into the depths of winter. So what you could get with that is a mix of rain, sleet, snow at times. Certainly it's cold enough, I would suggest, for a few wintry surprises as we bring weather systems through, but it doesn't look like a sustained or severe cold spell. However, you'll notice there are a couple of very cold outliers. There's that one just there, and there's this one over here. That one there, I've had a look, is ensemble member number 14, and that does what I was talking about at the start of the video. It builds a high pressure over Scandinavia, eventually gets us into an easterly flow and pulls that deep cold pool from Scandinavia into Western Europe. So it is an option that that could happen, but at the moment there's not a huge amount of evidence for it, but it needs to be kept an eye on. So this is the GFS operational run for Monday. That's where we finish a 5-day forecast. So essentially what's happening there is that we're in a cold northerly wind. We established that on New Year's Day, and for Monday we're still cold, high pressure out to west, trough through Scandinavia, bringing that very cold air into the northeast. We're on the edges of that. We are cold. There will be snow showers running down the eastern coast. Now, into the middle part of next week, what happens is that we keep it very cold up over Scandinavia. This low pressure is diving southwards in towards the Denmark and the Baltic Sea. So, on the north side of that, really cold across Scandinavia. For us, we've got this ridge out to the west, and we're in a chilly sort of northwesterly flow. So, that's still fairly cold air coming down across the country. This is how the upper air temperatures are looking through the middle part of next week. There's that very deep cold pool I was talking about over Scandinavia and backing into western parts of Russia. And we are cold at that point. We're not within the severely cold air, that's up to the northeast, but we are pretty cold with the air coming out of sort of Iceland and Greenland, that sort of area. Now, as we move beyond that in towards the second half of next week, we try to bring this low pressure in from off the Atlantic. That's doing a bit of a stall as it's coming down across the country, and that's probably enough to be producing a rain or snow event at the end of next week. We'll have to wait until closer to the time to see how the parameters are setting up, but it looks like that stalling system coming down across the country could be producing a bit of a snow event. Again, the really cold, severely cold air is just to our east. It's in the North Sea. Looks like it's waiting to take its opportunity to strike and push westwards. Doesn't quite do it, and by day 10, actually trying to re-establish southwesterly flow from off the Atlantic. It's a very close run thing that at the end of next week, this storm was happening a little bit further to the west of us. Maybe we'd start to pull in that really cold air from the east. So very close with the operational GFS. This is a parallel run of the GFS, and this is going to become the operational run next year. They like to upgrade the model every year, and for a few months they have the upgraded version running as a parallel, just to iron out any sort of glitches within the works that take place. So what we see with a parallel run, again in that northerly wind for the early part of next week, and then we go through to the middle of next week, and we keep it colder than the GFS operation, what we're just looking at. Actually, we've got the wind coming in still from the north, very deep cold pool lurking over Scandinavia, and there's low pressure in the North Sea, so that could bring in snow showers perhaps down the eastern coast through to the middle part of next week. Now, the parallel run actually tries to build pressure over Scandinavia, so that's quite interesting. It gets very, very close to starting to pull in some severely cold air from the east. Again, we bring this weather system in at the end of next week, which is coming up against that block of cold air to the east. That's stalling. You can see that via the elongation in the atmosphere. This is where all the severe cold air is sitting, just to our east. As this system stalls, it's probably enough to be producing rain or snow, maybe a bit of a snow event at the end of next week. So that's the wintry surprise I was talking about earlier on. And then beyond that, what the parallel run does, it just builds high pressure through again. So the parallel GFS is very, very close now to pulling in some really cold air from the east. The ECMWF looking like this for Monday, again in that cold northerly wind going through into Tuesday and Wednesday, brings slightly less cold air around the top of this high pressure from the northwest. Again, there's that deep cold pool sitting over Scandinavia, waiting to strike, but not quite able to. So the ECMWF is a little bit milder, actually, than the GFS for the early part of next week and the middle part of next week. We finish up on day 10. Again, a bit in between, really. We've still got that very cold pool that's sitting over Scandinavia. but it's all, the air for us is all coming in more from a northwesterly direction, so it's not that cold. And probably not even a rain or snow event there, just generally wintry showers, I suppose, in the north, with a fair amount of dry weather in the south. There's the upper air temperatures at day 10, showing it is quite cold to the north, less so further south. And then we go through to the GEM, and that one has us with that northerly wind on Monday. We go through into the early part of next week. We bring some slightly milder air in around the top of the high pressure from the northwest, and then we turn winds back in to the north again up towards day 10. That does look cold as we're going up to day 10. Again, we've got that deep cold pull over Scandinavia. It wouldn't take much of an adjustment to move this high pressure more towards Scandinavia. If we did so, we will start to turn the winds in from the east, and that is actually what I talked about, the option number 14, the ensemble member number 14, which is this just here on the GFS ensembles. That is what option number 14 does. So I'll just very quickly talk you through that so you can see how it does it. This is how things are looking at the end of next week. Again, there's the deep cold pull over Scandinavia. As we run through to day 10, what happens is low pressure dies south across the country. So on Friday, the 6th of January, there's a low pressure coming in off the Atlantic. On Saturday the 7th, that low pressure going over towards Germany, turns the winds into the north. Again, that deep cold pull is sitting over Scandinavia, and then it starts to move the high pressure up towards Scandinavia on Sunday the 8th, I think that is, and then by the time you get through to Monday the 9th, the winds are going into the east with a deep cold pull sitting just to our east, and that cold pull begins to be pushed westwards. You have a look at the upper air temperatures there on Tuesday the 10th of January. It looks very, very cold indeed. That's severely cold air moving in from the east. You'd have daytime temperatures below freezing all day with that. Night times would be into minus double digits, and you'd probably bring in quite a lot of snow to the east as well as that cold air runs in over the North Sea. That's how we could get ourselves into quite a severely cold spell of weather through the early part of January. It's a very low risk that it would happen, but because we've got the deep cold pull over the Nordic regions, we do have to be alert that it's a possibility that it could come off. As it is, it looks like we're definitely going to have the northerly wind over New Year, so it's going to get a bit colder then. There'll be snow showers up in north, nothing particularly severe. Middle part of next week, I would think it probably turns a little bit milder, and then later on next week, I think we have a chance of bringing some rain or snow down across the country as we have a bit of a stalling weather system, and that system is stalling because the cold air, the severely cold air, is in over Scandinavia. It's blocking the progress of the Atlantic. So we might get a little bit of snow event later next week. And then beyond that, all eyes will be on that cold pull. Will we start to push it westwards and set up quite a severe spell of weather, or will the Atlantic break through? We can't answer it at this stage, but it's still a case of watch this space. Things are quite interesting at the moment. Right, that's all now. Check out 5-day forecast if you'd like to do that. It's been a slightly longer video than normal, but it's a very interesting period, quite a complicated period, so I wanted to explain how this is all developing. So thanks so much for watching, and that's it for now. Bye for now.